Hello everybody, welcome to the second day of the Rezzed developer sessions. Welcome to the people watching us online on Twitch, where you can watch all the videos if you didn't get a chance to see one of the sessions. So it's my great pleasure today to introduce our next guests, who are Hannah and Olivia from Failbetter, to talk to us about Sunless Skies.
Oh man, it's really arrogant of me to cheer my own trailer, but I love it so much it basically brings a tear to my eye. Hello! Oh man, I can't really see anyone. That's probably for the best. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to Rezzed. Welcome to our presentation about Sunless Skies. My name is Hannah Flynn. I'm Communications Director at Failbetter. This time last year I was about to have a baby and now she's about to be 1, so I feel very like I'm at Rezzed. Something went wrong, something's missing. But it's wonderful to be back, and I am Communications Director, as I said. I am in charge of events like this, ably assisted by my colleague Hayley, who will be Instagramming you all if you don't move out of the way, so watch out for that. This is my colleague Olivia.
And I'm the editor and writer at Failbetter Games. The writer at Failbetter Games, but the editor, and that's the important bit.
The one. First of all, could I ask if anyone is a backer of Sunless Skies? Yes! Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you. You don't get the opportunity to thank people in public very often. Without you, we would not be here. Without our community, we couldn't be here. I wanted to share these pictures from our Kickstarter. These are backers all over the world dressed as people from our games, the Masters from Fallen London. People were ripping down curtains in their mum's house and pulling up bed sheets to dress up to help us with the Kickstarter. It was incredible. You have, look around you at the backers in the crowd, you have these people to thank or blame for what's about to happen. We were actually funded in 4 hours on Kickstarter, which was incredible, about this time last year, so fantastic. Thank you all so much. Right, for everyone in the Twitch chat who just missed the trailer but have come in and are like, what's going on, what's this? I want to just lay it out for you. Our universe is called Fallen London. Our first 2 games were set in something called the Niche, which is where London, Victorian London, was stolen by bats and placed on this sea, this underground sea, on the very shore of an underground sea. Sunless Sea, you were able to sail around the sea, but now Queen Victoria has taken London and shot it into the skies, into the heavens. So if you think of the Victorians in space, by the way, you don't have to play the first 2 to really get this one. What would they have done with space? What would the Victorians, with all their ambition and hunger, have achieved without gravity holding them back? In this vision of space, the stars are alive, and they are vast consciousnesses called the judgments. They have dominion over all things, but they are dying one by one. So your captain is out there sailing around a giant space steam locomotive between these outcrops and planets, and some of them are like a giant flower that you can dock next to. Some of them are maybe the body of a dead monster or a huge tree, a giant fungal consciousness. Basically, it ain't your mama's space. There's a lot going on. You are going to die a lot. That's it, 30 seconds, good. And that's basically Sunless Skies in a nutshell. We're delighted to have been named one of the most anticipated PC games of this year by a bunch of places, including Eurogamer and PC Gamer. So we're hoping just to live up to that. We've been in early access and games in development since August last year, and we're due to release in September this year. We've learned loads from doing our previous game, Sunless Sea. Who's played Sunless Sea? Lots more people. Okay, good. In fact, did someone just put the lights up for a second? Thank you. I can see there's like little hands, like silly. We learned so much, and it's worth saying that what we've taken and put into Sunless Skies hopefully will make it a really great game experience. So if you enjoyed Sunless Sea but found it a little first game-y, which it was our first real PC game, you'll find there's a lot less repeating of content. You don't have to keep coming back to the same port, and you don't always go back to the very beginning when you die anymore. Combat is much better, much improved. Ships in space have an excuse to move in a different way. They are you can strafe and drift, and the enemies that we've put in the game are much more intelligent and behave differently. So you should find really rich, different combat options. The early game experience and the late game experience in Sunless Sea were sort of the wrong way around, if you like. The early game was really difficult for some people, and people found that it got kind of trivially easy once you'd put in a few sort of double figures of hours. So you should find that's better balanced this time. And all the rough edges, hopefully, we found them all and taken them off. So when we launched Sunless Sea, we couldn't do text rescaling, which was really difficult, obviously, because it's a text-based adventure game. So you can resize the text and the UI now. We've got controller support in Sunless Sea already, so Sunless Skies already. I knew I'd do it at least once. So it should be, overall, a much better game experience and more respectful of your time as a player. So I hope those of you who are here because you like Sunless Sea and you weren't sure about Skies will consider giving it a go based on that. And yeah, we're in early access again. People sort of questioned why we would do it, but it's how we like to develop. Open development is kind of part of our process, and we know that Sunless Sea was made so much better by the feedback that we have from our players. So to be able to do that again with Sunless Skies and to continue to refine and develop what we do is a pleasure and a joy. And if you want to get involved, like I say, it's out now, so if you did want to play and give us feedback, you're very welcome. But obviously it's a story-based game, and you might want to hold back until launch. Completely brilliant. You absolutely should do that. If you buy it in launch week, that would make my job much easier. That would be great. Thanks. Yeah, and I don't know if there's anybody in the room who doesn't know Failbetter at all, but we're famous for our stories. We're famous for our words, our good writing. And I get to stand up here and big it up in uncomfortably un-British ways, and I get to do the Will Smith hands.
Oh, God.
Olivia, who's one of our writers. And she is writer, editor. She's a BAFTA breakthrough Brit. Yes. Ooh, yeah. And she's a little bit scary, but I love her. So I'm going to explain a little bit how our stories work, and then Olivia's going to go into some more detail talking about the regions in Sunless Skies. Sunless Skies, as I said, takes place in the high wilderness. I don't want any antivirus protection. Don't want it. A version of space which is much closer to a theological idea of space than the space from 2001. So if you think about it as islands on a sea, but in a barely hospitable, semi-breathable, frozen atmosphere, it's a bit like your captain is going on Shackleton-style explorations or North Pole expeditions that are very foolhardy and dangerous, and you will probably die. In each region, we have a number of segments, and then segments move around within those ports, and you can see how much more randomization is available per region than there was to the map in Sunless Sea. So you get a much more surprising game experience because it's going to change a lot more often. We have 2 regions, so we just added one just the other day, Albion, of an eventual 4, so we're about halfway through in terms of the content that we're entering. And I'm going to pass you to Olivia, who's going to tell you a little bit about how the Reach and Albion content works.
I'm storytime. So, where the Reach was a frontier region unclaimed by any one faction, Albion is under the thumb of Her Enduring Majesty, Queen Victoria. The Reach is a place populated by free-spirited pioneers seeking to establish a home for themselves away from the control of London. Albion, in contrast, is for those happy to conform to Queen Victoria's stringent rule, or for those canny enough to build their existence working around it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stories to be found in the new region, Albion. In Sunless Skies, the British Empire manipulates time. Time is found in geodes. Crack one open and you'll find glistening black fibrous growths, the consistency of salt crystal. These are the hours. They must be refined before use in an arduous process left to the poor and desperate, of course. The refining results in filaments of time which can be used by vast looms to create a range of time-changing effects. The British Empire largely holds a monopoly on time and uses the hours it mines in the Reach for its own benefit. It can use time to speed up travel, maintain a perpetual day, or prolong the lives of favoured citizens. It also used time to set up its outpost in the high wilderness more rapidly than should be possible. The first colonists and officials to enter the high wilderness from the Neath were furnished with an elaborate knot of time, which allowed them to achieve more than 30 years of preparation, while only 5 passed in the Neath. By the time the mass exodus from the Neath began, Albion and New London was ready, gleaming in the light of a fresh man-made sun. Albion is the heart of London's power, and covered in London's earliest high wilderness colonies. Exploring it, you'll be able to visit the Avid Horizon, the gate through which your captain passed from the Neath to the high wilderness. You'll be able to visit New London herself, the major hub of the region. Here you'll likely see familiar faces from both Fallen London and Sunless Sea. But, more importantly, it's the only place you'll be able to get a decent cup of tea. But I'm not going to detail all the ports you can see in Albion. There are lots of things to be surprised by as you explore, and I don't want to spoil any of them. Failbetter Games is fairly unusual within the industry for the number of writers in our games. Sunless Skies is no exception. We want to involve a variety of voices to bring in a range of imaginations and create a universe no sole writer could invent. In my role as editor, I work with the writers, in-house and freelance, to ensure that the game has one coherent tone without losing each individual writing flavour. This is reinforced by our pitching process, where writers pitch their idea to the narrative director, who will work with them to ensure that it's a good fit for the game, and that it includes a range of narrative choices that our players will relish. Then, if it's a freelance writer new to our game engine, they'll be assigned someone in-house to ensure that the writing and design process goes as smoothly as possible. Speaking of freelancers, I got to work with the writer Cassandra Kaur to bring her beguiling, horrific, treacherous writing to Sunless Skies. Cass is known for her short fiction novellas, and once I'd read Hammers and Bone, I knew I had to get her on board. Failbetter extended our tendrils in her direction, gathered her wrists, and applied her hands to a keyboard on our behalf. The result is Worlebury-Juxta-Mare, a whitewashed town upon a sea of celestial mist. This is a holiday destination for Londoners, where it's always a bright August. Holidaymakers promenade along the raucous pier and take donkey rides on the pebbly beach. Of course, I shouldn't need to say, all is not what it seems. This is a Failbetter game, after all. Once you've gained entrance to the port, you discover that Worlebury-Juxta-Mare is precisely like every other weekend destination, shabbier than advertised and bristling with ways to spend more money than you'd intended. A macaron store. Delighted, you bustle towards the cramped stall, shouldering past an old man in a top hat. But before you can accost a shopkeeper, you realize they're actually just cardboard cutouts pasted on cheese so old the mold is iridescent. How disappointing. But as you spend time at Worlebury, you may notice something off. Perhaps it's the carnivore grins of the officials who enforce the best of times. Or perhaps it is just something slightly off about the donkeys in the way they scream, in the constant glares of their many eyes, or in their disgorging of viscera. Or perhaps it's the singular lack of donkey shit, despite their earthy natures. You enjoy a pleasant donkey ride along the shore. The rolling motion of the beast's 4 unequal legs is soothing, and the complimentary earplugs block out all but their most shrill hunting screams. And then you can visit the beach. Of course, it is a beach. What else could it be? It is a stretch of pale particulates and rolling mists. The air smells of salt and things that mummified in the sun, of cinnamon and licorice. But even there, if you pay attention, there are things your eyes try to slide over, things that live in the mists that existed long before Londoners arrived, that exert influence over the port and those who work there. Dig deep enough into the port, and you can partake in the battle between the port officials and the cult. The officials seek to maintain a delightful experience for all, while the cult is desperately interested in the thing in the mists. Working with Cass was immense fun. We had video call pictures and discussions where every monstrous suggestion she put forward was welcomed with, "Yes, that's awful, brilliant, give us more." I'm not certain she's ever been so encouraged to make things worse, and she certainly did. Then Cass and I went away to work this into a port that fitted the setting, making sure her distinctive writing voice remained without seeming out of place within Sunless Skies. The end result is I won't call it beautiful. Aesthetically pleasing, perhaps, if that can also cover eldritch horrors. Powerful, certainly, and very much fun to play. I loved working on this port with Cass, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what players make of it. I can't say it's my favourite part of Albion, as I'm excited about the whole region, and I refuse to pick a favourite. But we have a number of writers represented in Albion. Richard Cobbett, who is a regular Failbetter freelancer. We brought on board Harry Tufts of the House of Many Doors. Meg Jayanth, whose Sunless Seaport was hugely popular, is back. And we also have the imaginative Spillings of our in-house content team. My own port in Albion is a place of utmost misery, which I hope you'll enjoy.
So, in summary, thank you for that sightseeing trip to Worlebury-Juxta-Mare. To recap and summarise, especially for the people who just joined the Twitch stream now and are wondering what the hell's going on. Victorians, in space, sail the stars in a steam locomotive, the very finest stories, handcrafted for your enjoyment, messed up donkeys. We implore you and ask you kindly to tell your friends and to wishlist Sunless Skies on Steam or on GOG, where they're both available on both stores in early access and games in development. But if you're not sure about buying a story game before it's finished, wishlist it and then we'll be able to remind you when it's done. That would be most kind. Help your local indie dev by wishlisting. Or if you're in the show floor today, come and have a play if you haven't yet. Come and speak the code word to our stand and get some goodies. We're sort of there, if you just sort of go that way. And finally, we both implore you, don't antagonize the bees. Thank you very much. Any questions?
You guys head over to the middle of the stage.
Middle, okay.
Okay, we now have time for some questions. There is a very daunting microphone just in the middle of the aisle there, but please do come up and ask a question. Don't be shy. I'll start us off with a little question. Olivia, when you're approaching people or looking for writers to contribute to the game, is there a kind of checklist about the character of their writing that you look for? Or their ideas, maybe?
I mean, how it actually happened with Cass was I read this thing and went, holy fuck, Chris, you have to read it. It was as simple as that. But I think it's people who can do gross and horrific, but also funny. Like, it's quite easy to horrify, and it's not. It's relatively easy to horrify, and it's relatively easy to be funny, but to do both at once, so people go, ooh, ha! Yeah, it's a difficult combination. I think that's probably the most interesting thing. And once I find it, I yell at them and go, hey, do you like games?
Yeah, you don't even need to really be a games writer, necessarily.
I mean, not every
helps.
person who writes books can write for games, because there's a lot of the whole interactive narrative that it's quite hard to grok, because you're used to being able to plan plot beats and knowing when someone will hit a moment, and so you can build up to this point, and like, nah, you can't do that. You don't know when they're going to get there.
They saw that was going to be the end, and they've pissed off to do something else for half an hour. So that's not going to have the same effect if the player is like doing their own thing. It's hard to plan for.
Do you find, so in a big blockbuster game where they've got very expensive scenes they want to show you, everything's designed around people seeing that. Do you find in Sunless Skies, because you can put more story in, and I suppose it's cheap, it's not like a big blockbuster scene, do you find that you put more in that are you more confident of putting things in that people can miss around? Can you put more missable story in? Is there a freedom that comes with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't want to write stuff no one's going to read, but at the same time, this is a game where you die quite a bit, and we don't want people to repeat content, so they'll get a chance to see it at some point. And it's also nice when they discover bits that have changed, like, ooh, that's a little surprise, and that's always good.
It's a game about discovery.
Yeah.
So the knowledge that people might miss stuff is part of the fact that we accept that it's a game about discovery.
I think we've got someone who's come to ask a question. Yes, please.
Indeed. Assuming you can hear me? Yes, excellent. So your words have always been delicious. I'm curious, how do you build mechanics that support the themes that you're trying to convey? I think one of the difficulties that Sunless Sea had was that it conveyed very well that the sea was very inhospitable and dangerous and unwelcoming, and you did not belong. But that led to a very high difficulty in the early game. I'm wondering how you resolve that and how you make it support your narrative without falling foul of traps like that.
Chris did a massive design doc at the beginning with lots of things about the themes, about the notes we wanted to touch on, and people just kept coming back to that when, even in the mechanics and designing stage, that was at the top. And like, this is the universe, this is the, I guess, the feeling we want.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you forget to go back to it, and you go, oh, I need to fix this, and you go, oh, this is why, because it doesn't fit. But as long as you keep coming back to the touchstones, I think that has helped a lot.
And we have different touchstones this time.
Yeah.
So in Sunless Sea, the overall thing we were aiming for was an experience of loneliness, which leads to the sea being very inhospitable, and you're alone. But in Sunless Skies, we're more looking for a feeling of dread and wonder, and because they're the same coin, two sides, which leads you to different design decisions. So the experience grew organically around the idea of loneliness, which led to the game being where it was in Sunless Sea, whereas now we are cognizant of that. That's how we ended up with Sunless Sea. So we're trying to do something different and have different touch points in Sunless Skies.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm hoping that the people who do the game designing are like, yes, okay, thumbs up.
Thank you very much. Oh, look, is this a flurry
As if
of
by
questions?
magic.
Yeah. Yes, please. Fire away.
Hello.
So how sort of linked is the Sunless Skies content? Like, how much of it is sort of an extension of stuff that you've already done? You know, obviously Sunless Sea, quite a lot of it was sort of extending threads that had sort of already been hinted at in Fallen London. But obviously, seeing as it's presumably set a few decades into the future and it's sort of a bit more out there,
Yeah.
is it harder to do that sort of thing, or is there a decent quantity?
It's kind of easier because you can stick a whole new range of characters in. You don't have to keep refilling the lore of someone you've got fleshed out already, because otherwise you're just repeating that character. But we haven't killed them all off. Some of them are just a bit older. So you've got touchstones to come back to, and it's like, oh, this is a familiar character that if you know them, it'll be a nice sight to see. If you don't, there's still enough there. This is a person that you can get to know. But there is something liberating about time has passed, people have changed. And so you don't have to be consistent because people aren't. But in a consistent way, doesn't make sense.
I think all of our games are about discovery, right? So the player of Sunless Sea could have a completely different game to the player who picks up Sunless Skies and avoid meeting someone really crucial who turns up in Skies, but you don't lose out on something just meeting them for the first time in Skies. If anything, someone who discovers Skies first and works backwards to Fallen London might have the very best of experiences, because it's probably the most refined game that we've ever made. And they will then be able to appreciate getting into the backstory, if you see what I mean. All of our stuff is, we don't know what the player's going to do. We don't know what they're going to find first or last or never. So it all exists kind of at the same time. But Sunless Skies does take place in 1905, which is a bit later on. It doesn't matter. Play-wise, you should find it to be an easy thing to pick up, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello.
Hi.
So personally, I've always thought that Eldritch Horror is kind of one of the hardest ones to actually get right when it comes to the writing process, because so often when people put together ideas and stuff, they end up actually making everything so weird and uncanny that it stops being interesting after a while, and suddenly it's very actually hard to kind of wow people. And I find, especially kind of in the board game scene and kind of writing and experiences there, that's something I kind of found recently. But at the same time, you can still have those ideas which are so particularly horrifying. You know, they're just absolutely delightful. I mean, one of my favorite, I think, is the Japanese visual novel Song of Seiya, which has a concept of a man getting brain damage and seeing basically everything as horrific, pulsating flesh. And I think that is just so unsettling. You know, you can't ever say,
Two
wow,
thumbs up.
you know, that's
Good family fun.
But how do you kind of, while writing, make sure that you're not kind of overdoing it, you're not like bombarding the player, and you're keeping it so that you never truly overload them really with that kind of content, and that it's always kind of constantly interesting?
I mean, I think it helps that we're in a different world. Like, a lot of stuff that's kind of Eldritch Horror is still the Earth as you know it, but a bit fucked up. Whereas we're in a different universe, so we've got a lot of stuff we can add in that's not part of the usual brackets stuff in there. Also, I think it's because we do funny horror, in that We can leave things lingering there, and then people think of it. It's very much fridge horror. Like, it's funny when you first come across it, and then you're like, actually, that's awful. But it's already happened, and you're in some other experience, so it's always slightly behind you. And the unsettling feeling is, what was wrong with that thing that I just saw, rather than, hey, it's obvious.
And it's bite-sized,
Yeah,
so you can
and
have a little
it's that.
something, and then go, oh, damn, when you read something
I
else.
think also one of the principles we kind of have is that humans are very, very adaptable. And if you're in a continually terrible situation and there's other people there, you kind of find a way to pretend it's normal because that's the only way to cope. So if everyone's kind of constantly going, then it gets quite dull because the reaction is a completely high one all the time. There's no kind of emotional curves. So I think the fact that we actually play as if people have sort of become accustomed to it, it's a bit unsettling, but because they're very Victorian, they kind of act as if it's fine. And that also gives us a bit of room because we can change what the height of the emotion is in a particular scene, which you can't if there's just tentacles everywhere constantly.
Tentacles everywhere constantly. Olivia Wood, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And nice T-shirt, by the way. Okay, next question.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Nick.
Sunless Sea, one of my absolute favourite, one of the most impactful moments for me was the Isle of Cats story.
Yeah.
And I think it is literally the only time in any game I've ever played that literally made me be, oh my God, what have I done to this poor sod?
You're welcome.
How much of that kind of, I mean, I imagine a story like that would be very hard to construct to do it well. How much of that have you managed to fit into Skies? And how much is planned?
I feel we'll be able to upset you again. Meg wrote that, and she's written again for us. But yeah, there are some things planned, and we do like to explore those moments. Like, so we do plan them, and we are aware of certain things that are awful. But also, quite a lot of our time is doing it sensitively, so you get how horrible it is, but it doesn't impinge on other kinds of trauma. For that particular scene, it could have gone in a lot of other ways and didn't. Yeah, we don't do too many of them, but when we do, we think about them, and yeah, we've got some in.
Yeah. Well, you were very good at it.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much. So the game is coming out in September, did you say? Okay, fantastic. Oh, one more question before we go. You can still come up and ask questions. When people are playing in early access, you say you have certain themes in mind, like you had loneliness in Sunless Seas and dread and wonderment. Was that in
Dread and wonder, yeah.
In Skies? Do you find people have a range of different reactions or surprising reactions when they play in early access? Do people's reactions surprise you about what they get from the game or what they take from it? Because it's quite authored stuff. I wonder how predictable it is.
I think the way that we put the games together is about fires in darkness. So the islands are points of light where we know roughly what's going to happen of a number of outcomes. And then the player goes off and makes their own in the dark, and we don't know. And then they go to another island, and then we know what will happen to them there. So the accretion of those experiences, we can take a guess at how they'll feel. But the main way that we find out whether we've really hit it is the Steam reviews always start with a paragraph of "my captain was starving, and it was the end of days." And like, no, we got it. They had the Sunless Sea experience. We are still tuning and still fleshing out Sunless Skies, so that's something I'll be watching out for. And it happens with all the reviews as well. All the reviewers start with a paragraph of like, "my crew, I ate them all." And yeah. You can still eat your crew in this one if that's the kicker. Yes, cannibalism. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you just get hungry. Okay, next question, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, as an editor, because obviously you've got a pretty diverse group of different writers with slightly different styles. So what specifically do you do to unify their tone while still keeping it individual?
The hard part is a lot of this I do by ear, because I've done a lot of editing. We have a very rigorous house style guide that occasionally I'll just hold it towards them and go, this, you are not obeying this. But mostly I just read it, and if it sounds right, it's fine. And if it doesn't, I'm like, this doesn't feel right for this reason. How about this? And then they'll take a note and write something completely different that's way better than my suggestion or they did in the first place. So it's often by ear, but it's because I've been in the world so long, because I was a fan before I joined the company, and so I did Fallen London and Sunless Sea. I know what it sounds like, but I am one of those annoying people who go, "How do you edit?" I'm like, I don't know, I just do it.
The important thing is that you have to have one. Like
Yeah.
if you're doing a game of this magnitude with this many words, 1.5 million words, more than that, loads more than that in Fall on London now.
Yeah.
God, when did we last count? And then about 350,000 in Sunless Sea when it was finished. You can't approach something like this without an editor. And the fact that Olivia is getting loads of recognition for her work is amazing because it means more people are going to hire editors and make better story games.
I mean, being edited isn't always fun, because when I do the writing and someone edits me, I'm like, oh God, everything I've done is terrible. Oh no. Oh, you've made it good. But it's the whole thing is I couldn't imagine having my work go out without being edited now, and I feel very sorry for writers who don't get that, because it's like sending someone out with without clothes on. You're like, please put some pants on before you go, and it's just, I don't know, you need editors.
You're saying that you're ready to run nude through the streets to promote this game. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I imagine it makes for some quite strange dreams after a while, having seen all those stories.
Oh, I have terrible dreams. I come into work and I say, this is what happened. They're like, oh God, please eat less cheese. But
Please eat less cheese, but write that down.
Yeah. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, then we will end it there. But thank you very much to Hannah and Olivia from Failbetter. And that Sunless Skies coming in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank
Dun 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 dun.